you very much. Thanks for the invite. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Meares. Nice to meet you all and have a chat. And thanks to Alex for the invite as well. So this evening, I'd like to run through with you all about what IT support effectively means in 2022. So this covers reviewing initial requests for support, how things are troubleshooted, what's changing in the world of IT support as we see it, and how we're trying to both be proactive and reactive at events and threats effectively to our clients. So for some context, I've been working in the IT support game for about 20 years. This time I've worked in various roles in IT support for companies operating generally within Kent and London. So this is my company. Just over 4 years ago, with some friends in the IT sector, we started our own IT support company called Vertec IT Solutions. Again, covering Kent and London, both IT support, doing it both remotely and on site. We've got our little vans that go out and about. We're currently operating a small team with clients of all shapes and sizes, from your one-man band all the way through to your enterprise businesses. So with the staffing level of our biggest client, around a couple of hundred people. So that's a little bit about me, but let's run on to what I'm going to have a chat with you about. So step one, the request. So this is relatively straightforward. Client has an issue, they give us a call, email, or we get an alert on our systems. We have monitoring agents that effectively tell us if a system has been down for 10, 15 minutes, something like that. That'll send us email alerts. That'll also send text messages as well to our staff, potentially on-call people. So what that does is just advise us of obviously any issues, but if it's a text or call directly from a client, then we'll take the details down. So taking down all the initial information obviously is key. So we take down the details, what they're experiencing, keep it all logged. Keeping a log of it all is absolutely key, because at the end of the day, we could be dealing with the rest of the follow-up of it next week, in a month's time, maybe in a year's time. But not only that, there could be members of staff additionally that might be bolted onto the project or issue that need to follow up on it. So what we want to do is also follow up with the golden rule as far as tickets and everything that comes in and the information that we get. So it's just simply ABC. Call it ABC. It is assume nothing, believe no one, and check everything. It's as simple as that. It's a really straightforward kind of mantra that we have. So this is more for dealing directly with clients and not necessarily for our automated alerts. Automated alerts that come in, they have a bit of information, don't get me wrong, they can be a little bit generic. Microsoft is renowned for saying there's a general error. You never know what's going on, but it is what it is. So when our clients contact us, this isn't to say that the information provided by the client doesn't give us enough insight into what's going on, or that the client doesn't know what they're talking about, but it's just that the information we get should provide us with enough information for us to begin our own investigation. Never assume all the information that we have been provided is accurate until we see it for ourselves. I say this just because a prime example of this is one of the most simple things in the world, based on Microsoft architecture and Windows, which is we say to a client, have you restarted the computer? Common IT crowd sort of scenario, have you given it a restart, all that sort of jazz. And they will turn around and they will say yes. And you will say, okay, can I just go and check it for you? And they'll be like, why? And it's because of things like soft restarts and soft shutdown functions. This prime example, this was my PC, it was off for X amount of days. Then I fired it up, and if you have a look down here, so this is Task Manager, Control-Delete, Task Manager, hit CPU, down on the uptime there, 4 days. So I've only just turned that machine on and it's showing that it's 4 days. That's because it's been in a soft shutdown. So we need to make sure that even though we're asking people to do it, we check it and then we go and move through the process ourselves. So again, very simplistic option here, but that's just something we have to bear in mind. This isn't to say the client has lied. This isn't to take it out on the client, but it's simply we've just got to double check everything and make sure we're doing it all for ourselves. So troubleshooting, as far as what we're actually doing when we do this. So noting down steps and going through it. So what we're doing when we're testing each step of the way just log it all. There could be obviously, God knows how many that we could be experiencing steps that we're going through. Not only that, we'll have to refer back to it. And again, it could take, we might not see it for another year for all we know, so we just need to double check it all. We then need to note down error messages, of course, everyone's done this, where the tickets are key in case of further review and potentially even making a knowledge-based article or something like that about it. Communication is key. Is the network that we're doing work on actually operating correctly? Is there something potentially further down the line or that's impeding what's going on? And knowing how to Google. Sounds daft, other search engines are available, but at the same time, you need to know what we're doing for it. I'm sure most in the room are, we're all techies here. It's just a case of following it up with the correct keywords. Don't just take a copy of said error message, it could be huge, and slap it into Google. Take the error code, for example, what operating system, does it happen when it boots, etc., and going through that. Next up, ensuring, for obvious reasons, there's nothing actually going on at the site. Numerous times we have a server outage, someone hasn't told us that someone's working on the electrics at the site, or they're having their broadband replaced, or something daft like that. We just need to check that there isn't something going on. It could also be, if it's a cloud environment, ensuring that the service status, you can go on various websites, they'll advise you what's going on there, so we need to check those. And of course, what happened and when it happened. So when you were doing it, what were you doing at the time, etc., following that up. And finally, can you replicate it? We just want to get the client to do it so we can then go through and start marking things up and running through everything. So there was a couple of things here I was going to go through, but time-wise, I'm going to skip through. So what I wanted to go through with you is the changing environments and what we're seeing. There's a lot to go through here, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen many of them. Hopefully there'll be a few here that you haven't seen before. So the first one being identity theft and social engineering. So it wasn't long ago that identity theft came about from someone getting hold of your mail or a letter or something like that when you move house. And then obviously they sign up to various things, take out cards, loans, mobile phone contracts. So companies try to get smarter with the information they collect. They want multiple security questions, and so what happened? The identity thieves had to up their game and things. But thankfully, obviously, there was things like social media that came about. So they started doing these lovely quizzes where they put out information like, "Oh, can you just answer these lovely bits of information?" So what have we got here? We've got where is it? What's your favourite colour? Where was your first school? What's your date of birth? Now, hang on, the most astute among us would go, hang on a second, it's asking for my date of birth. Surely I'm not going to get that information. So then they thought we're going to be a little bit more smarter. When I say smarter, it gets a little bit corny, but they upped their game and said, okay, let's figure out what your porn star name is. So that will be a combination of your first pet's name, your city where you were born, and your mother's maiden name, and stupid things like that. So you have to be aware of what's going on. Anyone can fall foul of it, regardless of age, status, etc., So next thing, changing environment. So wireless security, visibility and isolation. Big topic, but as far as this goes, ensuring password complexity, something another area I'll go through in a jiff, but it's ensuring isolating your network and the SSID. So for example, you've got pub or club, you may have a staff network, for example, you have all of your card machines that are on that network, you have your pay systems and all that sort of thing. Keep that separate to a guest network, and your guest network should be isolated. That means if someone connects to it, then they need to not be able to see the other devices on the network, and vice versa. You don't want other people being able to dive into your network as well. So a prime example of this, and no word of a lie, I ended up many years ago going to a new client that we took on board. They kept reporting, they had an IT company looking after them, they had, their internet connection was getting really slow at various times. When we went in there, we had a look, we were seeing network traffic on there like Netflix and BBC iPlayer. We wondered what was going on. So we checked everything over, did a reset of everything at the site ourselves, and then saw it happen again. So we were like, okay, we're going to go to the site, we're going to have a look, investigate. Went in there, and I was told, oh, you can go and sit at that meeting table for a moment, and then you can have a look at the site. Whilst I was there, looked up at the whiteboard, there is the SSID on the whiteboard, as well as the password that they've been scrubbing out one and putting a new one on. and then directly outside is an entire residential block that have effectively been just leeching the Wi-Fi because they've been broadcasting what their details were. Sounds daft, but unfortunately very, very common. So it's those sorts of things you need to be aware of. Make sure you've got a guest network. Don't necessarily make your staff or attach to the staff Wi-Fi. Just keep your own standard devices on it. Next up. Viruses and current threats. So again, quite a big one. These used to be, install keyloggers to get passwords not long ago. They used to be to harass or shut down businesses, WannaCry and various things like that. You fire up your computer, it then quickly shuts down, fire it up, shut down. It's an annoyance. It wasn't causing any real damage per se. It costs money, but it's not too much. But then now we're obviously seeing ransomware attacks, crypto virus attacks, and those sorts of scenarios. So all of those are obviously, the idea behind them is to encrypt your data and effectively hold you to ransom. Before, these used to be potentially created by Jeff in his basement, and now we're seeing a lot more state-sponsored and those sorts of things, terrorist organisations producing these things so that you send them money to decrypt your data. No guarantee you'll get it decrypted or they'll give you a key, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, these things are becoming very rife. Next up, we've got data loss and recovery, I believe. Yeah. So one of those common forms of complicated issues and calls we get that can also incur the greatest cost for resolution, inadequate measures of backup. So recovery from backup can take time, but it's certainly better than obviously a total loss of the system. And we get a lot of IT support companies like ourselves that can recover certain types of data and certain types of failures, but we can't recover them all. So that's where we have to go to specialised companies that do all white coats, take it into a clean room and try and recover the data that way. However, these can be expensive. If you've got a RAID array, for example, that goes down, that your data is spread across multiple devices. Trying to recover that is not cheap. We had a 2-drive RAID array, Stripe, that we were quoted on £20,000 for a client to get their data back. It's not cheap, and believe you me, it goes far higher than that. So that's something you have to bear in mind. Backups are key there. And then finally, passwords. Complexity and length, we all know this. We're all aware of what passwords, you need to be complex. You need to make sure you're not using the same ones on multiple sites and that sort of thing. But it does lead me onto this. So this here is a screenshot of how long it takes, at the present moment in time, this is in 2021, for a hacker to brute force your password. So this is on the basis that they have just your email address, or they just have your username, for example, and they have the other information as to how quickly they can potentially penetrate the system with a brute force attack, which is basically hammering the system with a guess of the password. It will go through all your obvious potential words like God and things like that, if anyone's ever seen the film Hackers, brilliant film, terrible film. But it'll go through things like that. But here, you want to be sitting in the green. That'll lead on to other things like, for example, that'll lead on to things like password management platforms and things like that. So, the proactive and reactive approaches. As mentioned, keeping passwords different and complex is now more than ever a big deal. Thankfully, there are platforms that assist in not only creating these passwords and setting complexity, but storing them, advising if there have been previous breaches. There's a website called Have I Been Pwned, where you can pop in your email address and just check to see whether or not you have been flagged on any dark web databases for your email address and see if you've had any potential compromises. So that's something to check out. But a password management platform is very good, but at the same time taking into consideration looking at two-factor authentication and SSO. Now, everyone's aware of two-factor and SSO, I'm sure, but it's one of the best base security options these days. This could be in the form of relatively straightforward, when you sign into a website with a username and password, it sends you a text message. You could have an app on your phone that obviously runs through the keys. There's Authy and things like that as far as apps you can download. But if your platform you're using has an option for any of this, go for it. SSO, single sign-on, great idea, as long as it's used in conjunction with something like two-factor authentication to get in, or a one-time code, or something like that. Because the key is with SSO is once you log into that platform, it's single sign-on. The idea is you can access everything you need to under one roof with one login. But that in turn leads to a keys to the castle scenario, which is if someone else gets hold of it, they've got access to everything as well. So always use it in conjunction with something like 2FA. So the bigger one that I wanted to talk about was antivirus. Large area to cover. Things have come a very long way as far as known exploits and virus definitions. Originally, an antivirus program worked in much the same way as vaccinations in real life, and we all know the scenario, but in case you didn't, obviously over the past couple of years, I'm sure we all have. So basically, it's dealt with by detecting the virus, analysing it. This is a large company going through it, checking it over, and then finding a vaccination for humans, but also virus definition for computers. And these are pushed out. Thus, if the body or PC detects the same thing again, it will attempt to stop or block it. But things are always tricky when it comes to zero-day attacks. So these are the attacks that no one's seen yet. These are the ones that have just come out. These are the ones that are happening at this present moment in time that really no one's seen, and they're the most dangerous. So how do we go about looking into those? So there are new technologies available like sandboxing, which executes files in a virtual environment to inspect the malicious behaviour before allowing them to run. So there's also behavioural detection. So modern EPP or endpoint protection can establish behavioural baselines and identify processes or users that are behaving abnormally and try and spot them. Even though there's no known threat signature, it will try and associate them and go, oh, actually, we're going to pop you to one side and say, no, it looks suspicious. There's also something called EDR, or Endpoint Detection and Response, which has now come into play. Now, as far as this is concerned, when an endpoint encounters a never-before-seen threat, it will do exactly the same, which is basically try and categorise it as malicious. But it will be able to detect polymorphic and advanced persistent threats and allows for an immediate response to these. So it does use machine learning models and AI learning, for instance, that can be trained to monitor an unknown file or make categorizations and decisions based on behavior. So, and you know, categorize them as such. Unfortunately though, some of these slightly more clever bits of technology are in your more premium antivirus products. So it used to be that you used to have your free antivirus products. They were great, but they had a premium option, and sometimes they come with some flashy, you know, little bits or extras on the side. Nowadays, some of the more premium antivirus do actually have a bit more backing and a bit more oomph to them, like EPP and EDR. So next up, VPNs, we've all heard of them. I'm sure the majority of us are actually using them in the room, but virtual private network. These days should be used if you are connecting to a guest network. So I talked about wireless networks earlier and hoping that if you connect to it, hopefully your device is isolated. The problem with this is it relies on hoping that the person's Wi-Fi that you're connecting to is secure. You can't guarantee that. And as such, a VPN is a really nifty way of encapsulating and encrypting your data before it goes out. So that if you are connected to a guest network and you are unsure about it, obviously, hopefully no one's going to get to your data. And not only that, if it detects that the Wi-Fi goes down, something like that, or latches onto another Wi-Fi connection, for example, it will trigger it and trip out and basically stop it from working. And this goes for scenarios, you know, you're in a McDonald's, for example, you're using their guest Wi-Fi. It's really easy for someone to set up a malicious network that looks identical to the one that you're supposed to be joining. You hop onto it and someone's doing what's called a man-in-the-middle attack and trying to extract information or data out of it. So VPNs are really, really nifty. Now, hardware and software filtering. This really is to do, I mentioned about antivirus software earlier and multi-different antivirus platforms. And they have the facility to do web filtering and have the ability to have a software firewall built within them. And they are better than nothing. But a hardware firewall is much more superior. At the end of the day, a hardware firewall can pick up threats before they even hit your computer. And they also are developing AI learning, etc., so things get flagged. If there's software updates for that, generally they're going to pick them up a little bit quicker. And as I say, hopefully they won't actually enter the network, they're going to stop it. You can do port blocking, you can do, there are firewalls that can do all sorts of threat detection analytics as well, so it's really nifty. Backups, and DR requirements. So this is disaster recovery. So why have I said backups 3 times? Because these days it's generally advised that a platform should have a minimum of 2 forms of backup. But dependent on your disaster recovery requirements, you could and budget, of course, you could potentially have 3 or more. If you ask any client, they will generally say, I want everything covered, I want everything backed up, and if something goes down, then I want something to take its place instantaneously. I need to be running 24/7, 365. Now that is great, but it all comes at a cost. You can have as many backups in the world, you can have replication systems so that if one server goes down, the other one will kick back in, but it all costs money. So there is a fine line and balancing act. At the end of the day, if you've got an on-site, or even, it's in a hosted platform, if you've got a server there, you want to ensure you've got potentially a backup platform that is at site, because the recovery from that is going to be very quick in comparison to pulling a recovery from off-site, but also you want to be looking at a cloud backup as well. You also then want to be considering that the secondary backup is, for example, staggered. So we talked about getting, for example, a ransomware attack or something along those lines. So say, for example, a ransomware attack happens midnight. Your company operates at 8 in the morning. So that happens, your backup runs at 3 AM, you have just backed up all the encrypted data. You've got a problem. So if you do a staggered backup with the other form of backup, you're going to hope that you've got that one as your secondary line of recovery. But not only that, what if the place burns down? A catastrophic failure. Something goes bang, something catches fire, that sort of thing. You need to recover it. It wasn't that long ago that a huge data center in France, for example, had a huge fire, took out tons and tons of platforms. So it's those things you have to bear in mind. It's all well and good going, I've got something stored in the cloud, or I've got something stored there. You still have a backup of it. Backup is key. And then, I wanted to mention cyber insurance. So something that at one point was seen as a non-required bolt-on for companies, or just a way of insurance companies to make some extra money with something that will probably never be used, and it's one of those things you bolt it onto the side. But times have significantly changed, and unfortunately, with the best will in the world, the best software and hardware and everything that we've talked about, there is still the possibility of falling foul of something detrimental that could cost a company thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of pounds. And this may not happen by a member of your staff, their staff, getting a virus, clicking on something they shouldn't, although of course this does happen. But this can be from an external supplier falling foul of something and you being caught up in it. So an example being, a client of ours was sent an invoice from their client. They receive it every few months for services that they receive. The invoice had some different bank details on it, and they turned around and went, hang on a second, this looks a bit suspect. I'm going to ask the question, we'll email, hang on, your bank details have changed. They then come back and say, yeah, don't worry, we're moving banks. The name that you're getting on the verification thing that all banks have now started issuing, when you get the details slightly wrong, it will say, hang on a second, that isn't X, Y, or Z. They turned around and went, don't worry, that's one of the directors. It's just going in his name initially until the name of the company pops up there. So they went and paid that invoice. That was for memory serves, and just going down the list, £32,000 that they paid that invoice. And unfortunately, they got caught up in a scam. Their supplier, someone hacked their emails. They had been intercepting the invoices that they had sent out to their clients. They had been amending the bank details. And then if someone responded back to them, they had rules set up on the mailbox. So if it came back, the person in accounts couldn't see it because it would quickly get filed into a folder that was out of the way or forwarded to another mailbox. And that was that. So they ended up paying £32,000. This leads to why cyber insurance is actually quite a big deal, because although it might cost you an extra 100, 200, or even more than that, if you have to try and recoup 32k, that's a good return on what you've just lost because of it. So it is a big deal to consider. Cyber insurance these days is something big and clients should consider it. It also covers our time as well. As an IT support company, if we have to deal with a ton for an ad hoc client, they're not under support with us, we've obviously got to send a bill. But that bill will be covered by the cyber insurance for the recovery aspect of it as well, and anything else we need to potentially do work on. So there's a big thing to be dealt with. We also have to consider if there's any kit to be replaced and things like that as well. So yeah, big deal. Cyber insurance is a huge deal in this day and age. To be fair, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all for your time. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free. Go for it.
I've got one. You mentioned about hardware firewalls.
Yes.
Do you have any examples, like recommendations?
WatchGuards are we have become certified in it ourselves. There are multiple options about. We use WatchGuards ourselves, so I would say that route. Feel free to Google hardware firewalls and see what's out there. Really, it's a difficult one. I can run through it with you at some point because it's a big area. There are different pros and cons to various different platforms, but yeah, the WatchGuard are very good.
A similar thing, cyber insurance, do you have any recommendations for that either?
That would be dealt with by whatever insurance company you're using. So if you're using an insurance broker, just say to them, I'm interested in cyber insurance, and hopefully they'll be able to turn around and go, yeah, not a problem. It's generally just a small bolt-on that will go onto the side of your general business insurance. So that's why I'm saying it's really worthwhile, but do double check how much it covers you for, because obviously, like normal insurance, there will be a limit on it, and you need to consider if you were to be, if something were to happen and you did need to claim on it, how much do you need to be claiming to cover everything you need to do. That doesn't just mean the data or the data you've lost or the recovery aspect. That's the time you also need to ensure about you as a member of staff, how long it's taking you to get it all sorted again as well. It's those sorts of things that need to be taken into consideration. Yeah. You all right? Yeah.
Funniest support story.
Funniest support story. Oh yeah, actually, really basic. Company I used to work for many moons ago. Went out every couple of days. This lady would come into work. Computer would be going on and off. No rhyme or reason for it. Just turn it. And we had engineers set to remote onto the machine and figure out what was going. We thinking, there's a power supply issue on the device, or the operator, blue screen. All those sorts of things, but she was adamant none of that was happening. So a member of staff went over there, couldn't find it. I ended up going over there about 3 weeks later, just have a look, and I went, right, show me exactly what's going on. You come in the morning, imagine if we're going from your car. It was literally just chucking a bag down and hitting the plug socket. That was it. Simplest thing in the world. Simplest thing in the world. So yeah. Anything else? Otherwise,
Question on antivirus.
yes.
When it comes to Macs, Linux, mobile phone, do you recommend antivirus for those?
So, mobile phones are generally relatively locked down these days. I would have used to advise an antivirus as far as Android. iPhones are generally pretty locked down. Androids we used to advise yes, but again they have become quite restricted now unless you're unlocking them, should we say, nicest way, jailbreaking, etc., then probably not required. As far as Macs, yes, do get an antivirus now. It used to be that Macs, everyone always used to say, you don't need antivirus for a Mac. No one's making a virus, you can't get into a Mac. The problem is all of these things are decided by how many people own the devices. If hackers or people wanting to, threat actors, want to go after something, they want to go after something which has a high footprint. So unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. There's a lot of Macs out there, and that has grown in comparison to PCs over the course of time. So yes, I would thoroughly recommend getting an antivirus as far as that's concerned. But yeah, mobile phones, not a necessity, but if you are really concerned about it, then go for it. Yeah. Yes?
Just sort of piggybacking that, you said about VPN, so would you need a VPN on a phone?
Yes, 100%. At the end of the day, lots of your data, lots of stuff going on that. VPN on the phone 100%. A lot of the platforms that you can sign up, I'm just thinking of the big names like NordVPN and Private Internet Access, for example, are some of the biggest. The majority of them, when you sign up to one of them, their VPN will be, you can use that, or an app that they will provide. You can use that on your PC, your tablet, your phone, absolutely everything. So yeah, I would strongly recommend using a VPN on any device if you are connecting to a guest network. Simple as that. It just covers you at the end of the day. There's no harm in doing it. So yeah.
Do you have a view on Internet of Things?
Sorry?
Do you have a view?
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. It's the light. I was just like, oh.
On Internet of Things?
In what respect?
Doorbells?
Tricky one. As far as that is concerned, it's all dependent on how secure the back end of it is. Look at Ring doorbells, for example. When that came out, it was just a username and password. Lots of people got into that because, I said about have I been pwned to the website or what have you. Details were leaked on the internet, and because people were using the same email addresses and passwords that they'd use on other sites, one of them gets caught, then that's how it works. That platform has now got 2FA and those sorts of things in place, so that's okay. The issue is more so if a threat actor gets into the back end of the supplier. That's the issue. Keeping your stuff secure now is getting not easier, but it's on its way to a secure standpoint, shall we say. The simple fact of the matter is, have a look. Your larger companies are going to have or should be investing in a lot more security than the little stuff. But at the same time, obviously, maintaining your own home network, for example, isn't a bad idea. So making sure that the firewall you've got for your BT router, Sky router, ensure that that's on. Ensure something called UPnP, Universal Plug and Play, things like that, are potentially switched off. Because all of those things are effectively opening your home devices to the outside world. So yeah, they all serve a purpose at the end of the day. I'll be honest with you, I've got a few, so it is what it is. But you can also turn off the microphone stuff, Alexa, etc., etc. I haven't triggered one in the room somewhere, but those devices, all of them come with microphone off buttons and all that sort of jazz. They are always listening. It's simple fact because they're looking for certain cues to activate them. So yeah, switch them off, no harm in it, and then fire them up when you want to. Yeah. All good?